big companies like FedEx and Amazon and Nike and Apple, they've been reported to have refund payments from the tariffs ranging from $600 million to $2 billion. And they're taking in these big checks like, well, the tariffs were illegal. And we're like, but we paid for them. Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. Well, watching the most recent Trump rally with the Attorney General of the United States and the head of the FBI, both taking extremely public political stances for MAGA and MAGA alone, coupled with the president surrounded by police officers in uniform, it's difficult not to feel as if the country is becoming increasingly more rigged for the Trump family and their enablers as we head into these midterms. Watching the speed at which these data centers are going up without environmental protections, the complete abandonment of the Epstein files, the seemingly forever war we have started, the suffering of our soldiers overseas, the consolidation of the media into fewer hands loyal only to the president, ICE being kitted out with shock gloves to use on the general population, and the relentless daily attacks on our election apparatus, so that even if the majority of us want to stop this government, the government is making it as hard as possible for us to do that. With all of that in mind, I wanted to talk to an expert, someone high up in the government who works for the one part of the machine that still seems to be functioning, the state court systems. So I picked my Attorney General, the AG of California, Rob Bonta, to come on to talk to us because on behalf of the largest, most populous state in the nation, he has been fighting seemingly endless battles on the people's behalf, particularly the most recent lawsuit he's leading to block the Paramount Skydance merger with Warner Brothers Discovery. If you don't know Rob Bonta, he is the 34th Attorney General of California, a former state assembly member and deputy city attorney for the county of San Francisco, who has worked his whole career to make sure government institutions work for the people. Since being AG, he has taken on everything from gun violence to fentanyl to attacks on our healthcare to the greed of big oil and other corporate giants, and of course, the seemingly never-ending lawlessness of the second Trump administration. Like me, Rob Bonta is an immigrant, born in the Philippines, but he immigrated to California with his parents as an infant, making him the first person of Filipino descent to serve as California AG. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Oh, thanks for joining me. And as a California voter myself, thank you so much for working so hard to stand up for our rights since 2021. I mean, we really need strong fighters in our corner, and this is an incredibly precarious time in our nation, and we need people like you. So I'm really grateful you're here.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
No, honestly, thank God for you. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the lawsuits that you're involved in that are going to affect so many people, not just people in California, but depending on how they go, people across the nation, please tell people what you think this job of the state attorney general is so they can best understand what it is that you actually do.
Absolutely. In short, I'm the chief law officer for the state of California. So we enforce the laws, all laws. It could be criminal laws, antitrust laws, healthcare laws, privacy laws, environmental laws. And that's one of the great things about this job. We touch so many areas. Anytime you open the front page or look at the headlines of what's happening in the news, we almost always have something to do or say about that. But our role is with respect to the law. We marshal the facts, we apply the law, we make sure that entities, people, corporations, Trump are not breaking the law. And we hold them accountable and sue them when they do, because we think it's important to have rules of the road, to have a constitution that is honored and followed, to have laws that are complied with. And when we see that not happening, we get involved. So in short, we enforce the laws of the state of California and often for the United States of America.
I mean, enforce the laws that are like on the books. That seems like, yeah, obviously we do that, but that doesn't seem so obvious anymore. So right? I mean, it's bananas. I mean, if the state attorney general is the head lawyer for the people of the state, that would mean that to extrapolate that, the attorney general of the United States should be the top lawyer for the people of the United States, right? Which is why so many of us are so upset that the new attorney general, Todd Blanche, has been so clear that he is the president's lawyer first.
Deeply problematic. And, he had a Freudian slip at his confirmation hearings where he said, I am Trump's lawyer. He still thinks he is. And I think that's what Trump hopes he will be, wants him to be, will pressure him to be. He already said on national television he will not be independent and sort of scoffed at that idea that independence is appropriate. Of course it's appropriate. The U.S. Attorney General should be independent, should have the highest ethical standards, should follow just the law and the facts, should not answer to any man, including the President of the United States, any person. His bosses are the people of the United States of America, Americans. And he fundamentally does not understand that. And he has shown time and time again that he'll be an apologist for rioters and insurrectionists. He will set up political patronage slush funds and grant the president immunity. He will be part of political persecutions instead of straight up criminal prosecution. So he has shown time and time again, unfortunately, that he misunderstands the role, the goal, and is not qualified to be in that position.
Yeah, no, I don't think he misunderstands. I think he completely understands what he's doing. He's just choosing to ignore the Constitution, ignore the law. I think that's why it was so inappropriate that Republican senators approved this person, because there's no way in any world that the president's former defense attorney should be the attorney for the entire country, because the conflict of interest there was already so blatant. And as you're saying, we're already seeing Todd Blanche campaigning with Donald Trump, showing up at rallies, putting the finger on the scale for Republican candidates, opening investigations into the president's political enemies. And of course, we can't forget that he was the one who moved Ghislaine Maxwell from a maximum security prison to a minimum security prison. I'm assuming to keep her mouth shut, but that would be my assumption. He refuses to meet with Epstein victims. He's telling the public that there's nothing more to come out, despite the fact that the Epstein Transparency Act says you must release it all. He's not doing that. So he's not even following the law. And then, as you're mentioning, on the Sunday shows this week, just yesterday, Christian Welker asked Todd Blanche, should the president have a voice in individual prosecution decisions? And he said, whether President Trump should have a voice, it depends. But yes, the president should have a voice. And correct me if I'm wrong, from one attorney general to another. But doesn't that mean that if the president doesn't want or wants someone to be prosecuted, they will be? And that is not at all how our justice system is supposed to work.
That is the opposite of how our justice system is supposed to work. It's supposed to be fair, objective, the image of blind justice, just looking at the facts and the law to see where they go. Pam Bondi, was part of Trump's effort to go after his political enemies. He barked orders at her to go after Comey and James and what Trump said, shifty Schiff. And she didn't do it aggressively enough or effectively enough for him. So in comes Todd Blanche to play that role, to answer to just one person. He's there for his unconditional loyalty to Trump and to do whatever Trump wants, whenever he wants, regardless of the law or the facts. And that is completely disqualifying.
Yeah. And it's a travesty to our faith in America's justice system, I think. I think it's really hard on the people who really do believe in the Constitution and the rule of law, and people like you who follow it for their work. But it also shows the importance of the state attorney generals right now, when we have a federal attorney general that's obviously not going to do his job. So let's go into why the states are so important these days, because people like you have the opportunity to look out for the rest of us when the federal government is clearly not going to. So talk to me about this lawsuit that you filed that 11 other states have joined that accuses Paramount Skydance of violating antitrust laws and attempting to remove market competition in their potential merger with Warner Brothers Discovery.
Absolutely. And just a quick point on your point about when the federal government, including the U.S. Attorney General, retreats from or withdraws from areas where they have long played a role in providing fair, firm enforcement, whether it be antitrust law, civil rights law, consumer protection law. We've seen them time and time again stepping back and sometimes not just failing to enforce, but affirmatively doing harm, like trying to usher through deals that break the law or trying to undermine longstanding consumer protection laws or civil rights laws. So in come the attorneys general, and we have state attorneys general. We have what we call concurrent jurisdiction, overlapping jurisdiction with the federal government. If the federal government's getting the job done, then they can use their vast resources to do it. If they're not getting the job done, like they aren't with respect to antitrust, civil rights, and consumer protection, we need to step up and do more. And so we are. And we've been involved in antitrust enforcement that is firm and fair in multiple cases, including Ticketmaster Live Nation, which we brought to trial when the federal government entered into a slap on the wrist, very soft settlement after trial began. We fought on and got a great jury verdict, and now we're in the remedies phase.
And just so people know, if they're not legal scholars and they don't know what the remedies phase is and they don't know this kind of legalese, let's just say that this is the Ticketmaster where Ticketmaster was not allowed to charge us all these exorbitant fees. And then Trump was basically like, go ahead, it's fine. And, you guys came in and said, it's not fine. People are being ripped off and we want to be able to represent the people and say this isn't okay for us constantly to be charged extra money for things that it's just making a corporation money. You guys were speaking on behalf of the people there.
That's right. We fought on behalf of consumers who were being gouged, mistreated, and others who were the victims of the market being manipulated by Ticketmaster, Live Nation. And when I say that the liability phase, that means we asked a jury, did Ticketmaster, Live Nation break the law? And they gave us a resounding yes. And so now we move on to a second stage of the litigation where we determine what their punishment is, what their accountability is, what they'll have to do to answer for breaking the law. And so we call that the remedies phase.
What people are realizing these days is that a lot of these companies are anticipating a lawsuit because they break the law. They're kind of putting the fine that they might have into the cost of doing business. And it's the people who suffer over and over again. And I think it's good that you're out here saying, like, what are the remedies to this? Because it can't just be, as you're saying, like a small fine and a slap on the wrist, and our fees are still high.
That's right. And sometimes when the system's not working the way it's supposed to be, the fines, fees, the penalties are so low that they are just absorbed as a cost of doing business, calculated in that cost and passed on to consumers once they pay that additional cost. And that's a system that's not working. And we're asking here in the Ticketmaster Live Nation case, also in Paramount Warner Brothers, for what we call structural remedies, not fines, not fees, but a breakup of different corporate entities from being merged together. So in the Ticketmaster Live Nation case, one of the things we're asking for is for Ticketmaster to be what we call divested, spun off, separated, become an independent corporation and company and corporate entity separate from Live Nation. That's one of the remedies that we're asking for. And in Paramount Warner Brothers, we're asking that merger not occur. And why? Let me just talk a little bit about antitrust enforcement, what it is. It's basically preventing monopolies from being created in our economy. And antitrust enforcement is there to have a free economy, a fair economy where any business can be created, if you have a great idea, a great service, a great product, then you can thrive because you get to compete in a fair way. When there's things like monopolies that use their size to defeat others instead of the quality of their product or service, or they engage in things like price fixing or other types of market manipulation, that's not a free and fair market. That's a rigged market. And so we police the market, regulate the market to make sure it's free and fair. And when we see cheating, violations of the law, like the creation of monopolies, we get involved to make sure that they don't get created. So we believe that in three different markets, a merger of Paramount and Warner Brothers, which would be the largest merger in the history of Hollywood, $110 billion, two entertainment titans turning into an entertainment behemoth, that they will break the law in three different areas. And so we're asking that the merger be blocked. And so far, the court has agreed with us. It has issued what we call a temporary restraining order, an order where they said you're likely to win this case when it's all said and done, and you'll suffer irreparable harm if we don't block this merger for now. And we have a trial date in next March where we will make our case. But this merger, if it occurs, and like other unlawful corporate consolidations and concentrations of market power, will hurt everyday people like you and me. It'll be more expensive to watch cable TV, more expensive to experience a joy of life, going to the movies on a Friday night. Those costs will go up. Jobs will get cut. People will lose jobs. Wages will go down. Competition, choice, quality will all go down. All the things we see when there's unlawful concentrations in the market. So we're trying to prevent that from happening in California and across the country. That's why we brought the lawsuit.
This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ protein bars, IQ mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious, low-sugar, brain and body fuel you need to win your day. IQ Bar products are packed with clean, delicious ingredients that keep you physically and mentally fit, like magnesium and lion's mane. IQ Bar plant protein bars are filled with plant protein, tons of fiber, no added sugar. IQ Mix is a zero-sugar drink mix that hydrates with electrolytes while improving your mood and boosting your clarity. IQ Joe is a mushroom coffee designed for mental clarity and packed with 200 milligrams of natural caffeine. It comes in 4 different flavors. In fact, there are plenty of flavor combinations to choose from all across the IQ Bar products, from mint chocolate chip protein bars to blueberry pomegranate hydration mixes to vanilla spice coffee. They also have limited edition and seasonal flavors. There's a reason that over 20,000 people have given them 5-star reviews, and more people than ever are feeding their busy lifestyle with IQ Bar brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. If you try their sampler pack, you can test every product and flavor with 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. Personally, I am a fan of the mixes. I like them in my water for a little boost midday. Right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text PG to 64,000. Text PG to 64,000. That's PG to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. So, our darling golden doodle Chips, our best friend, my little pod dog, my shadow, he died this July at 12 years old from sudden onset liver failure. We did everything we could, but we couldn't save him. So we brought him home for 3 days to do his favorite things with his favorite people, and then we said goodbye. I'm sure all people feel this way about their dog, but Chips really was the best dog in the entire world, and we're going to miss him so much. One of the things I talked a whole lot about while Chips was alive was what an incredibly picky eater he was. And if you have a picky eater dog, you know it can be surprisingly stressful. You try different brands, you put toppings on top of the food, you even sit next to them while they try to eat. And you tell yourself that they'll eat when they're hungry, but I swear our dogs know. They know the difference between real food and whatever most dog foods are made of, which is why we fed Chips Sundays for Dogs. Sundays for Dogs starts with 80% all natural meats and then finishes with superfoods like kale and ginger and blueberries. They gently air dry instead of using high heat. So Sundays doesn't even smell like dog food because it has no chemicals, no nutritional blends. It's just simple, complete nutrition. Sundays was founded by Dr. Tori Waxman, a veterinarian and dog parent who wanted a quality food that didn't need to go in the fridge or freezer, required no prep, and made no mess. You get the quality of a home-cooked meal with the serve ease of kibble. It's what dog food should be. And with over 100,000 dogs eating Sundays, let the reviews speak for themselves, especially from owners of picky eaters who have never seen their dog be so committed to a food. We actually donated all of our extra Sundays to the shelter near us after Chips passed, and they were so excited to have it. So why not add Sundays to your routine or make the switch? Go to sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl50 and get 50% off your first order. Or you can use the code politicsgirl50 at checkout. That's 50% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl50. sundaysfordogs.com/politicsgirl50 or use the code politicsgirl50 at checkout.
We're trying to prevent that from happening in California and across the country. That's why we brought the lawsuit.
Yeah, I have to be honest. You're being a real baller about this. I'm really appreciating it. I think a lot of people in the country who are paying attention to this merger are really paying attention to what you're doing here and what you've got the other states that joined you in this lawsuit to do. Because I think we have to explain to people it's not just what people talk about, like CBS and CNN are going to also be owned by this one family. It's about competition and creativity in a media market, right? Because what you do when you put two companies together is you reduce that competition. You reduce the competition on basic cable, on theatrical, on blockbuster films. Even the Writers Guild of America has pursued their own lawsuit saying that this will illegally reduce the number of buyers for writers' work. This merger is exactly what I think antitrust and monopoly laws were created to oppose. When we look at someone like David Ellison, who's running these companies, his father, Larry Ellison, is a close personal friend of Donald Trump. He's already said that he expects to win at trial, but they are going to give concessions in hopes that they can settle and make the deal done sooner. And you've said, look, we're not looking for a settlement. We're focused on winning at trial because the proposed conditions that Paramount is using in this don't go nearly far enough to address the competition concerns that have been raised in this lawsuit. And I think it's really important that you are specifying that it's not just about fines. It's not just about, oh, we'll do this little thing and we'll still consolidate all this power. You're talking about these behavioral remedies. Like they keep saying, okay, well, we'll promise to put out a certain amount of movies every year. And you're like, anytime this happens, it's incredibly ineffectual. That doesn't actually happen. You know, I think we're very clear that there's never been a single merger where people got jobs, where it made jobs. Everyone knows if you merge two things together, people lose jobs, right? And I think what's really interesting is that Paramount is now threatening to move out of California. I feel like they're actually blackmailing you a little bit if no deal is reached by October 1st, but the trial isn't until March 2027. So how serious do you think they are about that?
Can we not blow by the baller comment? Can I tell my kids that you said that?
The baller.
They will roll their eyes, but maybe it'll give Dad some props at home for a little bit. So sorry, I was dwelling on that. But
no, 100%. Because I actually told someone I was interviewing you today, and he was like, "Oh my God, that guy's doing great work with the Paramount merger thing." And I was like, "I know. know. That's why I'm having him on. But you really are. You're standing up for so many of us that are like, we can't have one news nation. Like, we can't have one news network that isn't completely owned or bought or friends with the president. And you've said, look, it's not even about the CNN part. It's
Right.
about the entire antitrust litigation that really has to be pointed out here, that what you're doing is you're saying there will be no more competition. You want your movies, they can only come from this place. You want your TV, it can only come from this place. And once it can only come from one place, like the Ticketmaster thing, we, the consumer, are trapped in never-ending price gouging because we have nowhere else to go.
That's right. And, we've seen this movie before, so to speak. In the Hollywood industry, we saw Fox and Disney merge, and Fox has made half the movies that they thought they were going to make. They cut thousands of jobs. And that's exactly what we expect to see here. Massive job loss, less volume of output, less TV shows and less movies being made. And, that's what history shows us. That's what the data shows us will happen here. So we're trying to block and prevent that. When you talk about David Ellison, unfortunately, Paramount and David Ellison want to talk about everything except for what our case is about. They want to talk about CNN. They want to talk about the streaming market, which we don't allege in our complaint. They want to talk about what foreign regulators have done, what the EU has approved or not approved, what the UK or Mexico recently, instead of talking about the impact on the market here in America. And he has, in my estimation, tried to blackmail us, the regulators, my office and the other attorneys general who dare to try to enforce the law against an unlawful transaction and an unlawful merger, tried to blackmail us for doing our job. And that won't work. It will never work. And the decision, if there is a decision to leave California, David Ellison owns it. It's all his independent decision. We're not asking for it. We're not seeking it. Our complaint doesn't mention that. There's no reason that he has to do that. And he'll have to explain why out of one side of his mouth, he says, I love Hollywood. I want to be part of the future of Hollywood. And then out of the other side of his mouth, he's saying, we're going to take Paramount out of California and move it to another state. It doesn't change our case. Our case continues wherever they are in the United States of America. So it seems like a blackmail threat, but he owns it. We're not asking for it. It's not part of something that we're seeking. But we are seeking to prevent the unlawful concentrations in the three markets in order to protect consumers, protect jobs, protect our free and fair market instead of a rigged market.
I also feel like it's a protection of free speech. I find that if you look at countries that have a consolidation of media, that have government approved media, which is the Ellisons are getting a lot of government approved media. If you look at what happened to 60 Minutes, or if you look at what happened to who gets to go on air on certain stations now, we're talking about freedom of speech, a First Amendment issue as well, and I don't want one company or three companies being able to decide what movies we see, what the messages are, who gets writing jobs, who gets creative work in this country. I don't think that's what anyone who believes in a free and fair economy would want. And I think Ellison's claim that the merger has been approved by 68 other countries is irrelevant to American law. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind right now. And I'm glad that's what you guys are fighting for. So listen, you have lots of other lawsuits. You're a busy guy, okay? You're a busy guy. Right now, there's another lawsuit with you and 24 other states who are suing the Trump administration to try and block the latest round of tariffs that are being posed on goods from a bunch of other countries. This lawsuit is going to be heard in the U.S. Court of International Trade. It's the latest in a growing list of legal actions that basically accuse the White House of exceeding their authority under the Trade Act of 1974, which, to be clear to the audience who don't know the Trade Act of 1974, it allows the president to impose tariffs if there are unfair trade practices or forced labor in order to penalize other countries for breaking the law or treating workers terribly around the globe. But this administration is using this law in a way that they're not supposed to. There is no forced labor as a pretext here. They're just tariffing people when they want, willy-nilly. And you've said that the president seems to be intent on raising the cost of living for Americans, and he's willing to break the law to do so. So tell me a little bit about this case.
Yeah, and just to give some context here, this is our third challenge to the unlawful tariffs that Trump brought. He brought some tariffs under another part of federal law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, that went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. They got struck down because it was beyond his authority to impose those tariffs. He brought another set of tariffs under Section 122 of the Trade Act. We've challenged those, and those are blocked for now. And so, not to be deterred with respect to imposing illegal tariffs that raise the costs for Americans and for American businesses, he's now on his third effort to impose unlawful tariffs. And so far, we're moving forward in court. There's multiple parties that have brought cases, private parties, as well as states. And the Court of International Trade is going to make a couple of test cases, if you will, to look at the arguments here. And we basically argue what you just stated, that this idea that there is forced labor practices in these 80 countries that have been the target of these tariffs, which happened to exactly match the tariffs that he was already imposing and magically appeared the day after the prior set of tariffs expired, that it's pretextual and that it's superficial and that there hasn't been any fact-specific or country-specific individualized assessment of any forced labor, that they don't even know if there's any forced labor or not. And they're just using that argument as a pretext to impose tariffs that they already were trying to impose and want to continue to impose. So there haven't been any decisions yet by the court in this case, but we think we have a really strong argument, as we had in the past two cases that we've been prevailing on, and hope for a positive outcome here on behalf of the American people.
Yeah, you got to feel a bit Sisyphusian with this. It's like, again, with the tariffs, we're going to push this rock up the hill and start all over again. I think most people don't understand. I really, truly think most people don't understand. And it's understandable because the government keeps lying to them that tariffs are taxes, right? That they are not something that the other country pays. They're something that the importer pays and then most likely passes the cost along to the consumer. So it's the American people who end up shouldering that extra tax burden when it comes to tariffs or to the president's failed economic policy. And now we're seeing with those other two cases that you're talking about, we're seeing a lot of corporations being paid back for the first round of tariffs because they were deemed illegal by the Supreme Court. But we were the ones that actually paid the price, and they're getting these big checks. And I'm talking about big companies like FedEx and Amazon and Nike and Apple. They've been reported to have refund payments from the tariffs ranging from $600 million to $2 billion. And they're taking in these big checks like, well, the tariffs were illegal. And we're like, but we paid for them. You know what I mean? So I find it really astounding that we haven't caught on yet that these tariffs are really a trick on the American people. And I'm really glad that you keep bring this back up, that every time he gets struck down, you're not like, oh God, I can't. You're doing it again and again. And I think that's how Donald Trump kind of functions. He breaks the law and then hopes the law doesn't catch up with him. And when it does, then he tries a different route.
Absolutely. And, we're closing off pathways each time. He can no longer use IEPA or Section 122. He's got to reach for some other way to do this. And we're going to remain vigilant and keep challenging him. And, to your point about the big corporations getting these refunds, if they were being responsible, they'd pass it on to the American people.
You think.
But they won't.
But they won't. Let's not get crazy. Listen, before we move on to talking about the midterms, I'd like to mention just a couple other lawsuits. We'll do like a speed round that you're overseeing and get your thoughts. You have a lawsuit over cuts to welfare funding. How's that going? I am having a really hard time right now finding my son a new doctor. He is moving across the country for school, and although he has the medical clinic at university, he is kind of grown out of his pediatrician at home, and we tried to get him a new doctor here before he left, but our doctor can't take any new clients right now. It really shouldn't be this hard, and I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. I'm sure many of us have experienced it taking forever to find the right doctor or the time that they can actually see you. Or you get an appointment, but it's scheduled months out, and then you have to take time off from work for it, and then you get there and it's like 15 minutes, like a see you next year. At least when I see my doctor, it's a great appointment. But a lot of the time, we don't really learn that much about our health. This is why I'm fascinated by Superpower. Superpower is a blood draw that gives information on over 100 of your blood biomarkers. This way, you unlock a real understanding of your body and find things that standard physicals miss. The Superpower app includes detailed information on your heart, your liver, your thyroid, your hormones, your metabolism, your vitamin and mineral levels, your gut microbiome, and even environmental toxins that might be in your blood. This goes well past everything looks normal to what's really going on inside your body. So far, 85% of the members have uncovered early risk factors for diseases. 79% have uncovered heart disease risk. 49% have been able to slow their speed of aging. Superpower is about disease prevention. It's about treating those symptoms when you don't know where they're coming from. It's about being proactive instead of reactive when it comes to our health. And Superpower is the most affordable 100-plus biomarker blood test and health membership, starting at $199, and it is HSA and FSA eligible. So go beyond your annual checkup and finally understand what is happening inside your body. For a limited time, our listeners get $20 off to unlock their health membership. Head over to superpower.com and use the code PoliticsGirl for $20 off your $199 Superpower membership. And after you sign up, if they ask how you heard about Superpower, consider supporting the show and telling them that PoliticsGirl sent you. I really think this is something we should all be doing at this point. Now I just have to find my son a doctor. Well, Sean and I just spent a small fortune buying things for Locke's dorm room. But when it came to his laundry detergent, he was very clear that he wanted to continue using laundry sauce. Now, we use laundry sauce at our home, but my boy wanted to make sure he could still use it in his dorm across the country. That is how good this laundry detergent is. Now, of course, for Lachlan, it's the smell. He doesn't realize that it's engineered for performance, that these concentrated pods make it so easy for him to do his laundry, and he just knows it's going to look good on his shelves and it's going to smell good. But it's actually packed with the cleaning power of bioenzymes that will obliterate stains. Lachlan chose Siberian pine and Australian sandalwood. He likes woody male scents. I often clean my clothes in Indonesian patchouli, but that's not for him. And I love that. This is the beauty of laundry sauce. You get to pick the scent that works for you. You can even boost the scent with their fabric conditioner, scent booster, dryer sheets, or the fabric freshener spray. I also ordered Lachlan the wool dryer balls because he loves them very much, and they're different than a typical dryer sheet. So why not try it for yourself or maybe your own teenager? For a limited time, our listeners will get 20% off their entire order when they use the code PoliticsGirl20 at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with the promo code PoliticsGirl20. And after you purchase, if they ask where you heard about them, please support the show. Tell them we sent you. Laundry Sauce legitimately has 2 different addresses for the McGowans now. They are delivering it to happy customers on both sides of the country. You have a lawsuit over cuts to welfare funding. How's that going?
Great. We're winning in 83% of our 83 cases, especially our funding cases. When we receive funding in California, it's congressionally appropriated. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress has the power to spend, not the president. And when he tries to change what Congress has done, it's a violation of the separation of powers. And we have often been able to prevail. So whether it be food, healthcare, or housing, the list goes on. For poor folks, we've been prevailing in our cases and either winning on temporary restraining orders, preliminary injunctions, final judgments by courts, and often affirming them when they go to the courts of appeal.
Yeah. And I think people need to understand this is really important because you hear Trump saying things like, we got, 40% of people off SNAP in Arizona. And you're like, no, you kicked 40% of people off SNAP in Arizona. That's not you got them off because they all have better jobs and they're making more money. They're just not getting the benefits anymore. Most of those people are children who can't eat. Here in California, you're saying, nope, we're not doing that. You owe us this money. Congress appropriated this money. These people who need this money are going to get it. That's the lawsuit. You have a lawsuit that you filed against the $100,000 fees the Trump administration wanted to charge for H-1B visas, which is visas for people who are going to work in American companies. How's that going?
That's going well. So we won at the district court level and it's got affirmed on appeal. So we continue to block the imposition of this unlawful $100,000 H-1B visa fee. And it allows school districts, government hospitals to hire folks when the American labor force doesn't provide for the labor force to fill those jobs. And so it's not displacing American workers. It's providing the workers that we need that are not available right now in the American labor force to provide critical services like healthcare and education.
Yeah, really important. Okay. So the lawsuit over the Trump administration cutting disaster grant money that was allotted for our state of California.
I mean, this was an absolutely outrageous, among many outrageous actions, an attempt to redeploy FEMA money, emergency disaster relief funding for California. It's a blue state, obviously, to red states, and just blatantly political. And we were able to block that in court, and that block remains. So another success story.
Amazing. And then the lawsuit against the White House sharing our health data with ICE.
This is a White House that desperately wants all sorts of data, healthcare data, SNAP data, data about Californians and folks throughout the United States of America. They want to take all that data and give it to ICE so ICE can enforce. That's unlawful under our federal statutory regime. And so while there is some data that can be shared with ICE, the very sensitive data, social security numbers, residents, things like that cannot be shared. So we've got an important block there as well.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, as if we haven't all heard about HIPAA laws our entire life. And now they're like, you know what, let's just share everyone's health information with these group as well. Okay, so the last one that we're talking about, the sharing our health data with ICE, that goes back to the importance of the state attorney general role and the protecting of their people. And that leads me to talk about the midterms, since the president and his party seem to be going out of their way to interfere with the November elections. And that's everything from trying to eliminate mail-in voting to trying to pass the SAVE Act, to Todd Blanche himself questioning why it would even be a problem to have ICE agents at polling places. So what are you doing to protect our vote here in California? And what do you know that other AGs and secretaries of state are doing to sort of prepare for election interference across the country, which I think we should assume is going to come?
Yeah. This is an area of deep concern, focus, passion, priority for us. We have been focusing on the right to vote, making sure that all of our eligible voters are able to exercise that right to vote, that their vote is not suppressed, that they are not disenfranchised. And the threat to our democracy via the vote, and the vote is the right from which all of the rights flow, is the president. If Trump wants a free, fair, accurate, reliable election, the best thing he can do is nothing. And remember, this is someone who asked in 2020 or 2021 the Georgia state officials to find 11,000 more votes. This is the person who seized ballots in Fulton County, Georgia. This is the person who fueled the attack on the Capitol to try to challenge the certification of the rightful election of Joe Biden. This is the person who issued 2 executive orders unlawfully and unconstitutionally trying to undermine the franchise and the right to vote. We challenge both and have both blocked right now. So we are looking at all of the possible things that the Trump administration might do and gaming out the scenario, planning what we will do in response, how to block it, how to stop it, whether it be military or ICE at polling stations, whether it be interference with vote by mail ballots through the U.S. Postal Service, whether it be seizing of ballots. We've been tabletopping and gaming out each scenario, planning. We think we owe our constituents planning, preparation, and readiness, and we are providing that.
It's really important. I mean, I keep saying to people when they ask me about like 2028 and who I think that the candidate should be, and I'm like, I don't want to talk about 2028 until we've had free and fair elections in 2026, because very clearly the president wanted an attorney general back in 2020 that would challenge the election results he did not like. He seems to have one that will do that now. So we have to watch what will happen with these elections before we can even talk about 2028. It's also clear that the representatives right now in Congress, both the House and the Senate, are the only ones who have the actual power to tell this president no. And that's no to the unnecessary war, no to the ballroom, no to the violence of ICE, no to the 250 new Escalades, no to the gilded gold horses. And they can't even tell him no to those superfluous things. And then you've got someone like Senator John Cornyn saying the quiet part out loud when he said, look, the Republicans have no way to rein in this president. And I want to say, well, actually, you do. If you did your job, you could tell him no. You control the purse. You are a co-equal branch of government, and you're acting like doormats for this man who thinks you can make all of our laws through executive order, and he controls the purse strings. So I think it's very important that people who are listening to this think about this when we come into the November election, that we need to put people in these positions of power who act like elected representatives and not indulgent parents, right? That they're just like letting their boy have whatever he wants whenever he wants it. And I think if we understand that, if we stick with this same party that's in power right now, what happens in 2028? Are they going to say no to him when he says, I think I'll stay. I think I'll be president for a 3rd term. I think we have to be concerned about that, because with Todd Blanche as the attorney general, the Supreme Court, the way it is, he's basically untouchable. So we need to make sure that in these November midterms, we put people in positions of power that are willing to stand up to this unconstitutional sort of breaking down of our laws. And I'm sure that's what you're watching every day and what you're trying to fight against every day.
100%. And it's been very unfortunate that the Republicans have not been patriots first and stood up for the Constitution and the rule of law and democracy. That's a very easy, simple, straightforward thing to do. Imagine that, just standing up for the rule of law and the Constitution when the president violates it, and holding firm as a co-equal branch of government instead of a supine branch that is an apologist and a supplicant and a knee bender to the president and does whatever he wants whenever he wants. It's been honestly embarrassing and humiliating for them to see that. But it's also been dangerous and painful and harmful to American democracy. So the people, I think, have seen that. The voters are smart. I think they don't want that to continue. So they will be looking for strong, independent voices to take the reins and make sure that they are expressing themselves and exerting themselves and making sure that they are showing that their independence and their force. And meanwhile, the attorneys general will continue to do what we do since day one, since the day the president was sworn in and issued his first unconstitutional executive order that we challenged the next day on birthright citizenship, a case that we won in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. We will continue to hold him accountable each and every time he violates the law, hurts our states. We will hold firm and make sure we're doing everything in our power to protect the rule of law, democracy, rights and freedom, separation of powers, checks and balances.
This is the importance of the state attorney generals, because we don't really have a rule of law if the Constitution is pick and choose. And we really do have to keep standing up for the Constitution. This isn't really about parties at all. It's about who is, as you're saying, independent enough to say the law comes first, the Constitution comes first. We need to follow that on behalf of the people and not on behalf of one single leader and his whims. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Rob. California is so lucky to have you looking out for us, looking out for the rule of law. I am personally grateful you are in our corner. Is there anything you would like to leave the people with before we go?
I just want to thank you for truth seeking and truth telling. It's an honor to be with you. And I just want to say 3 things are really important right now: courts, crowds, and courage. And courts are where we bring our cases and with the facts and the law, hold a unlawful president accountable and block the unlawful conduct from being visited on the people. Crowds are the people showing the rawest form of democracy and hitting the streets, whether it be no kings or hands off, and speaking up and speaking out about what they will accept and what they will never accept, which is the unacceptable conduct of this president. And then courage is so important right now. People have to, even with pressure, even with the potential for retribution, speak up for the future of our democracy and keep pushing. And you do that. I want to thank you for having me to talk about the future of our country. Thank you for being a patriot, and all the patriots who are watching. We got to keep having the courage to fight for our future of our country. It's worth fighting for, and I know we will fight. I will always bet on the American people.
Me too. Thank you so much. AG Bonta, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was California Attorney General Rob Bonta, reminding us that an attorney general's job is to enforce the laws on behalf of the people. And the state attorney generals are so essential now that we have a federal attorney general who has made it clear that he does not work for the people, but for the president himself. AG Bonta reminds us that lawsuits aren't about slapping lawbreakers on the wrist, but about structural remedies that make the law work better for the people. That our justice comes down to courts, crowds, and courage. The importance of the courts to uphold our Constitution. The importance of the people to pay attention to what's going on and then speak up for what they believe in, be that through anything from protest to voting. And finally, the importance of the courage of those who might be afraid to stand up to the illegal and corrupt powers that be, but do it anyway. AG Bonta has that courage. I like to think I have that courage, and I know you have that courage. This is not the end of the story. As AG Bonta says, we will never stop betting on the American people. I want to thank Rob for joining us today and you for caring enough about democracy to be here. Now watch those lawsuits unfold and be thankful we have someone like him fighting on our behalf. Until next week, PG out. The PoliticsGirl podcast is written and performed by me, Lee McGowan, and produced and edited by Happy Warrior Entertainment. All rights reserved.